Hello, beautiful community. This week's something a little bit different. I had a call from a good friend of mine, Cameron, who's been a mate for well over 30 years, I suppose. We went on a road trip many years ago up to Darwin. So we started in Melbourne at the bottom end of Australia, and we travelled in one of those camper vans, I suppose you call them. And we travelled up to Darwin, which is the top end of Australia. And we went up there for the Darwin Horse Cup. And of course it took us a week and a half to get there. We seemed to stop at a few places, and we met the locals, talked to them, and we certainly had a fantastic time. I've known Cameron a little bit longer than my wife, and I must say my wife's a better kisser than Cam. But that's another story for another time. Anyway, Cameron goes to Country Week Tennis, and it's a tournament that they have on every year, and they alternate between, I think it's Swan Hill and Albury, or is it Mildura and Albury? They alternate every year. I remember we went to Mildura at one stage. They were playing Country Week Tennis, and it's always in February, and I think I spent the time playing golf, and then at night we would catch up over a cup of tea and discuss the day's events. Cameron's been going there for quite some time with his family, and if memory serves me correctly, his father was granted a life membership some years ago. So the tennis tournament is something that Cameron has in his diary every year. It's a recurring entry. So he phoned up the other day and he asked if I could do some sort of a trophy for next year's tournament. He was going to give it to one of his team members, and I was ever so grateful that he gave me quite a few months to do it. February, what's that? It's probably about 6-8 months notice. I've had a bit of time to think about it, and I decided to carve 2 tennis players, and to keep within the theme of Country Week. They've both got alcoholic drinks in their hand. The male has got a bit of a pot belly. If Cameron's watching this, I'd like to point out that the tennis players don't resemble anyone in particular. And I carved them both in Huon Pine, and I used the Huon Pine because it does keep the detail fairly well. And so it took me a couple of weeks off and on to carve the tennis players. Then I thought I'd better put them on to a stand. So when I got back into the shed, I hadn't been in for a week, and we'd had quite a few frosts, and I ended up getting some rust on the lathe bed. It didn't take long to get it off, but it was quite interesting that it must have been a pretty cold week in the shed for it to rust up like that. So for the base, I selected some red gum wood. I've got a little bit of red gum wood in the shed, and I thought that would work well. And it was going to be a simple project, but it took a while because I wanted to make sure the measurements were correct, and also that it looked good proportionally. I wanted it to turn around just so that you could turn it and see all of the carvings, not just the front of the tennis players, that you could actually see the back as well. And my older brother Peter had given me some ball bearings, actually quite a lot of ball bearings, and I'm trying to think of a project to use them on, and I worked out that I could probably use them on this one and have it as a turntable. What they call it, a lazy Susan, I think, don't they? I turned the base and the top, and I made it so that I could fit the ball bearing in there. I was going to glue the ball bearing in, but I found that if I had the hole tight enough, the ball bearing would sit in there and it didn't need gluing at all. Over time, if the wood moved a little bit, it wouldn't crack at all. It actually worked out better than I thought. I was trying to work out how to attach the tennis players to the base, and I ended up by cut a couple of nails down and used them as dowels, and I didn't need to glue the tennis players onto the dowel as they fitted quite tightly. So I finished it off. I gave it a coat of tung oil, and I'll leave it in the house for a little while. So I'm grateful that Cameron gave me plenty of time to do this little project, and I've got it up in the house, and when I go past every time I look at it and turn it around, and it's one of those projects that I don't really want to give away. I'd rather keep it. I'm getting quite fond of it at the moment, but I'll give it a couple of months and I'll hand it over to Cameron, and I'm sure he'll appreciate it, and I'm 100% sure he'll have a great time at the next Country Week. as he's done in the past. Anyway, I've been able to do two of my favourite things, a bit of wood turning and a bit of whittling, and it's come out quite nicely. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. I'll see you next time. Cheerio.